Your analysis is noted, Camille. Now, if we're done with the theory, perhaps we can discuss the real-world application.
What if a single, arrogant sentence could vaporize a decade-long career and a $$150,000 salary? For years, Blake Hensley believed he was untouchable, the closer, the top salesman, the alpha in a male-driven business. He never imagined that a moment of blatant corporate snobbery and prejudice against his new black boss would trigger an underdog comeback of poetic justice that would leave him shattered and searching for a job. Stay tuned to see how the quiet composure of a single woman became a wrecking ball to one man's toxic arrogance. It was supposed to be another easy Monday morning for Blake Hensley. He strutted through the glass doors of Ridgeview Motors like a king returning to his throne, latte in hand, his expensive watch glinting. For 10 years, Blake had been the dealership's closer, big commissions, bigger ego, and a confidence that had long since curdled into arrogance. But that morning, the usual buzz was replaced by a strange silence. Co-workers were whispering near the service desk, their eyes fixed on the conference room where a new general manager was being introduced. Blake smirked when he saw the name on the agenda, Camille Torrance. He didn't know her, but he already had opinions. A woman, especially a black woman, running a luxury dealership like Ridgeview Motors didn't fit the picture he'd painted for himself. He thought his seniority and sales numbers gave him the right to say whatever crossed his mind. Inside the conference room, the scent of leather and coffee hung heavy. The regional director, Greg Turner, stood at the front, introducing Camille with a polished smile. "This is Ms. Torrance," Greg announced. "She's joining us from Charlotte, where she led her team to record sales 2 years in a row." Camille stood tall, composed, and professional in her navy suit. "Thank you, Greg," she began, her voice carrying warmth and clear authority. "My focus will be on customer relationships, building trust, and updating our sales approach for modern buyers." Blake wasn't listening. He leaned back, half grinning, and whispered something to the salesman next to him. A few low chuckles followed. Camille noticed but didn't break pace. She continued, "Luxury isn't just about the car, it's the experience, how the client feels from the moment they walk through those doors." That's when Blake's smirk widened. He shifted forward, interrupting mid-sentence with a voice dripping with condescension. "With all due respect," he said, his tone biting. "This is a male-driven business. You're a woman, you probably don't understand how this works." The air in the room didn't just drop, it snapped like a live wire. All conversation ceased. The service manager lowered his pen. Blake tried to make a joke of it, a quiet laugh escaping him, but the moment was gone. Camille looked at Blake, not with anger, but with steady, cold composure. "Thank you for your input, Mr. Hensley," she said calmly. "I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to discuss our perspectives later. For now, let's stay on topic." She didn't raise her voice or stumble, she simply moved forward, finishing her presentation as if nothing had happened. But everyone in that room knew something had fundamentally shifted. When the meeting ended, people filed out in silence. Blake grabbed his phone, trying to project normalcy, but his peers shot him nervous glances. Camille stayed behind with Greg, who quietly praised how she handled the situation. "It's not the first time I've dealt with something like that," she replied faintly, "but it will be the last here." That line stuck with Greg. Down the hall, Blake was already trying to spin the story. "People are too sensitive," he scoffed to the finance manager. "I was just being honest." But others had seen the calm, deliberate professionalism Camille carried. They knew this wasn't going to blow over. Camille spent the rest of the day visiting departments, listening more than she spoke. She never mentioned the incident once. But back in her office, she opened her laptop and typed a detailed report, date, time, witnesses, and Blake's exact words. The subject line was simple: workplace conduct concern. She attached it to an email for Human Resources, HR, and Greg Turner. Then she hit send. The next morning, Ridgeview Motors felt different, quieter, heavier. Employees spoke in hushed tones, glancing toward Blake's office. When HR coordinator Lydia Chen stepped into his doorway, clipboard in hand, Blake forced a smile. "Sure thing, Lydia. What's up?" "It's about yesterday's meeting," she said gently. "There's been a concern raised about a comment you made. We're doing a standard review." Blake laughed it off as a joke to break the ice, but Lydia didn't smile. "I understand. Still, we're required to document it." Meanwhile, Camille was going through her emails. HR's response was formal but clear: "Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We'll begin our review immediately." She felt not satisfaction, but resolve. She wasn't going to pretend she didn't hear what she heard. By late afternoon, the whispers had reached outside the sales floor. Blake stormed into Greg Turner's office without knocking. "Greg, what's going on? I'm hearing rumors that HR's involved now." Greg sighed. "Blake, sit down." Camille followed proper procedure. "HR has to investigate. It's out of my hands." "So you're siding with her now?" Blake snapped. "I'm not siding with anyone," Greg replied evenly. "But I saw what happened. You crossed the line." Blake glared. "I built this place. I'm getting crucified because someone didn't like my tone." "No one's saying you can't talk," Greg said, his voice level. "But you can't insult your boss in front of the entire team and expect nothing to happen." The tension was thick. Blake left the office fuming. His phone buzzed with a text from HR: "We'd like to schedule a formal meeting with you tomorrow at 10 a.m. For the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed his mind. Maybe this wasn't just a corporate dance. Blake barely slept. He replayed the meeting, Camille's calm, Greg's disappointment. At 10 a.m., he walked into the HR conference room. Lydia, Mark Sheffield, the HR director, Greg, and this time, Camille Torrance, were all there. Mark began: "We've concluded our review of the complaint. We've identified multiple incidents that reflect conduct inconsistent with company values." Blake crossed his arms. "Let me guess, someone didn't like my tone again." Lydia corrected him: "It's not just tone, Blake. The meeting remark was inappropriate and discriminatory. We also reviewed your file. This shows a pattern of behavior." "You're making me sound like some kind of monster," he protested, his voice rising. Camille spoke for the first time: "This isn't about fragility, Mr. Hensley. It's about respect. You questioned my competence in front of the entire team because of my gender. That's not leadership. It's disrespect." Blake leaned forward. "You don't understand the culture." "I was joking." Mark cut in: "Intent doesn't erase impact. The company's position is clear." "So what now?" Blake scoffed. "A write-up? I'll take the slap on the wrist." Lydia slowly slid a folder across the table. "This isn't a write-up. It's a termination notice, effective immediately." Blake stared at the paper, blinking. "You're firing me?" "Yes," Mark said simply. "You're being let go for violation of workplace conduct policy." Greg, who had been silent, finally spoke. "Blake, I tried to vouch for you, but there's too much history." Blake turned to Camille, anger flashing. "You wanted this, didn't you? You couldn't handle being challenged." Camille didn't flinch. "I didn't want you fired, Blake. I wanted accountability. There's a difference." His face turned red. "This place is finished without me. You're making a mistake, all of you." "Security will escort you to collect your belongings," Mark stated calmly. The word security hit harder than any other. Blake walked out, shoulders stiff, his 10-year career disintegrating with every step toward the exit. Within days, the story spread online, vague Reddit threads and a viral TikTok video. Blake's $$150,000 a year job was gone, replaced by public humiliation and a reputation that followed him everywhere. When he tried to interview at another dealership, the manager, Rick Donnelly, was polite but firm. It's a tough look, especially right now. Companies are careful about optics. Corporate would never sign off. Back at Ridgeview Motors, the atmosphere was lighter, more productive. Camille was thriving, focusing on steady improvement. She called a meeting, not to gloat, but to clarify, what matters is how we move forward. Everyone here deserves respect, no matter your title, your background, or your years in this business. Blake spent weeks isolated, the bitterness slowly giving way to a raw awareness. He found himself looking at old photos, noticing how distant and polite his coworkers' smiles were. He finally stumbled onto a video that made him pause. Arrogance feels like confidence to the person who wears it, but to everyone else, it's just noise. God, I was noise, he whispered. This realization cracked him open. A month later, Blake, now working a modest freelance job at a used car lot, typed a message to Camille. Camille, this is Blake. I don't expect a response, but I wanted to apologize. Not because anyone told me to, but because I needed to. I was arrogant, defensive, and wrong. Losing that job forced me to see myself clearly for the first time in years. I hope you're doing well. 10 minutes later, his phone buzzed. Thank you for reaching out, Blake. It takes courage to admit that. I accepted the apology before I even read it, because holding on to resentment doesn't help anyone. I wish you well. That was the moment the storm truly ended. For Blake, the loss of his career became the painful, necessary catalyst for growth. For Camille, it was the quiet, unwavering resolve to demand that respect is not a privilege for the powerful, but the baseline for everyone. If you've ever found yourself in Blake's story, or known someone like him, take this as a reminder: growth begins when pride ends. Drop where you're watching from in the comments. And make sure you subscribe to Story Fills for more relatable stories of prejudice, showdowns, and poetic justice.